Hi everyone. We're on the road interviewing people who have a testimony that they would love to give about how God is working in their lives. And it's my privilege today to have Trent and Morgan here with me, and it's a fantastic opportunity to hear your testimony from you both. And so just to begin, tell us a little bit about yourselves and your background.
So for me, I was raised in, I guess what I would call a liberal Christian home. We went to church often on a Sunday, and I think from my mum's point of view, that was just to get us exposed to church. And I remember in my early years, always had a Bible beside her bedside, but it was kind of just in the background of kind of my upbringing. We kind of fell away when I was about 12 or 13. And for me, that curiosity remained. And I remember very distinctly being quite upset as a child, feeling like I was very, very different and very overcome with emotion and not knowing how to deal with that. And I remember going to my mum one day, getting down beside her bedside on my knees, and I was crying. And I said, "Mum, why am I different? I don't know why I'm different." And she said to me, "I don't have the answers, Morgan, but I know that God does. So if you just read his words, you'll be able to find out about him." And for me, that's kind of where the journey started in terms of my walk with Christ.
Wonderful. And what about you, Trent?
Yeah, I guess I have a similar sort of story to Morgan. I was brought up in an Adventist home. So both my parents were Adventists, and that's how me and my brother were brought up. Till about the age of 9. Then my parents ended up splitting up. My brother went to live with my father, I went to live with my mum, and we moved around quite a lot of different places around the North Island. And I'd say from that point, Christianity or anything to do with God wasn't really in our home at that time. Yeah. I remember things that I was taught growing up as a kid, but through my teenage years, going into my 20s and stuff like that, it wasn't something that was important in my life or something that I was following. I guess I remember even times when I didn't have anything to do with God. There'd be times that I would pray at different times to God about different circumstances, and looking back on it now, but I didn't really have a connection with God, and it wasn't something that was important to me in my life.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So how did you two first get to know each other?
Tinder.
Good
old online dating.
Yes.
I remember I'd actually come out of an abusive relationship, so I had gone through some stuff, and I had decided that I was going to take a break from dating. And I remember earnestly praying to God. At that point, I was very deep into kind of trying to search for the truth. Yeah. And I also knew that my next relationship had to be different. And I remember praying to God and saying, I need to find someone that loves you as much as I do in order for me to have the kind of relationship that I want. And I took a vow of abstinence at that time and decided that I just needed to kind of clear my head and really focus on that. And, tradition would have it, or, modern day would have it that that's how we kind of date. So I was swiping on Tinder, I saw him, and I thought there's no way he'd be interested. But we matched, and from there we kind of just started a friendship. And it was a lot of just talking.
Yeah. And this is how long ago?
We're coming up 5 years now.
5 years ago?
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess from my perspective, so I had only just come back to going to church, I think just before we met. And I was in another relationship at the time. So the person that I was with at that time, I wasn't a Christian when we first met. And then my brother had started going back to church, and he invited me along. So I started attending. And the relationship I was in, I was starting to, I guess, grow in my spiritual experience, grow in my relationship with God. But my partner wasn't on the same page as me. We were on different pages. And yeah, I guess that's the whole reason that we ended up breaking up, just because, I was going more this way, she was going more that way. So, our paths weren't really on the same way. So we ended up breaking up, and then I remember I was talking to my mum, and I was like, will I ever find like a suitable partner for myself? Because I was starting to get older, getting into like my later 20s, my mid 20s there, and then I was thinking, will I ever find anyone in the church that I could be compatible with, or someone that will suit me? Because I remember being at church and I never really connected with anyone in terms of like a female partner, so it was hard for me. And I remember thinking maybe I won't find anyone in the church. So it was I felt like I was at a pretty low point at that stage, and my mum was like, oh, you've just got to trust in God. Like if we pray about it, I'm sure God will come through and be able to work a miracle and find someone that's perfectly suited for you. So I remember, it's funny, me and my mum used to pray a lot about it every day. We'd be praying that she would help, that God would help me find someone who would be suitable for me, and then someone that would be able to get along and be a really good match in the church. So we prayed for quite a few months doing that. And then I remember, when I was looking on Tinder and me and Morgan ended up matching, to be honest, I thought this wasn't what God had in store for me. I thought, I don't know what I was doing really. I was just seeing what sort of options were out there really.
Yeah. Casting out the
net. Pretty much. So like Morgan said, we started talking, and I actually didn't disclose to her that I was a Christian or that I was going back to church. Like I said, I was still pretty early on in my walk. So I actually kept that hidden.
Yeah. And you didn't know that she was a Christian either? Or
no, I didn't know any of her background to do with like Christianity or anything. So we both had sort of kept that hidden from each other. Yeah. And it's funny, when I look back on it now, it was because it was so early in my walk, I thought if I said something, they might judge me in a certain way, or she might think I'm weird or something strange about me. So I didn't think to mention it for quite a few months, was it?
It wasn't until he wouldn't hang out with me on a Friday or a Saturday, and I had just, obviously when you're dating someone, from a female point of view, you tend to do a little bit of stalking. So I was doing my background checking, and I was figuring out who's his mum, who's his brother, who are these people. And I just picked up on different things that I knew were biblical on his page. And I thought, this guy's a Christian.
You could smell it.
Yeah. And then the Fridays and the Saturdays were odd. So I researched and I thought, this guy is an Adventist. He's a 7-day Adventist. So I remember one Friday evening, I sent him a message and I just said, Happy Sabbath. Because I realised that that's what he was doing.
Because that's not who you were, a Sunday Christian, right?
Yeah, I had no idea. Yeah. I to be honest, I thought it was a little bit odd. Yeah. And I thought, I'm not sure if I'm ready for this, because to me, Sunday was the day. Mm-hmm. But I was curious, and so I sent that message, and I remember his reaction was something along the lines of, how did you know? And from there, the conversation around kind of Christianity really started, and particularly around the Sabbath conversation, that kind of entered in quite early on.
So how long did it take for you to kind of unite in your spiritual beliefs?
I think I remember after you had said that Happy Sabbath to me, I think it was a couple of weeks after that, we started talking more about spiritual things, right? I remember coming to your house, and then you had pulled out your old Bible that you had.
Yeah, so we'd had the Sabbath conversation, and he had pointed out the fourth commandment, remember the Sabbath day and keep it holy. I got really curious about that. So I did my research, and I remember praying about it because I thought, Lord, this is stirring something up in me, and I'm not sure why. And I know that I need to look into it because it says remember, and Trent was very kind of, he explained it really well in terms of, we tend to forget, and that's why it starts with that word. And so I looked into it more. I prayed about it, and I had a Bible, which I'd used for many years because prior to becoming an Adventist, I actually had been involved with the Mormon church. And I prayed about it, and I said, Lord, if this is the truth about the Sabbath, I need to know, and I need to know now. And when I opened my Bible, I kid you not, there was a handwritten piece of paper that I had put in there many years before, and it said in my own handwriting, remember the Sabbath day and keep it holy.
Wow, amazing. Yeah.
I get goosebumps even just, and in that moment, I had my confirmation, and I knew that I didn't know how this was going to end, but I knew that I was being led towards the truth. And whether that was going to be in terms of having a relationship with Trent or whether it was about me just getting closer to God, that was my starting point.
Yeah, amazing. And so discovering the Sabbath, so you weren't a dating couple at that point, or you were a dating couple?
Friends.
You were friends?
We were friends.
Yes. Yeah.
I was trying to get to the romantic side of things, but Trent was not.
It was a bit slow, was it?
Very slow. And I remember him just really being quite gentle in terms of my spiritual walk. And for him, he made that the focus. So he invited me along to church. He was part of a church plant at that time. I remember going with the intentions that I wanted to impress. And very quickly for me, it changed from a focus of Trent to a focus of God, and realising that I had to put him first in order for everything else to work out.
Yes.
And so I remember asking for Bible studies quite early on, because I needed to know if where I was being led was right. And so I began the 24 studies of prophecy. And very quickly I knew it was just truth revealed. I was absolutely flabbergasted. And yeah, I was hooked at that point and was just sort of lapping it all up. I just wanted to know everything that God, I felt, had been held back from me for so many years.
Yeah. So Trent, you shared, you grew up Seventh-day Adventist, but fell away, and it wasn't part of your life for a few years. So what brought you back?
During that time that I was away, I ended up really getting into my sports and just falling in love with playing rugby. Rugby was probably my main passion in life. It was the one thing that I really wanted to do. I wanted to be a professional rugby player, and so I put all the resources and everything I had into that. So yeah, going through school and stuff, was playing like age grade representative stuff for different unions that we were living in at different times. Played first 15 rugby, which was the highest level that you can at school.
Yeah.
And then coming out of that, when I was 18, I ended up getting an opportunity from North Harbour Rugby Academy. So they reached out to me at high school and were like, we've seen some of your footage, we've seen some of your games and stuff like that. We think you've got some great potential to make it to the top level. So we'd love to give you an opportunity, if you want to accept it, to, have a position in our academy. If you want to move up to Auckland, because at the time I was living in Tauranga. So that was where we had finished off, because we had been so many different places as a kid, and we were in Tauranga at the time. And I was at Tauranga Boys, and then they said, we've got this great opportunity. If you're willing to move up, in a few years you could be playing at the top provincial level. Yeah,
and that offer to move up to the academy, that would be, you'd be receiving some money as well? Or?
So no, there was no money involved with this at the time. It was just basically, I guess, as a rugby player, as aspiring rugby player, these are the opportunities that you're really looking for.
The channels you go through.
Yeah. And Mum was always super passionate and supportive about me trying to do that throughout my whole teenage years and stuff. She was always really behind me and wanted me to succeed. So she was open and willing to move, because we had moved so much. So it was pretty normal for us.
More?
Yeah, what's one more move? And we hadn't lived in Auckland before, so coming up to Auckland would be pretty exciting and stuff like that. So we decided to move up here. And then that first season I was in the academy. You really felt like you were on the way to being a professional. We were training pretty much every day. We were training at the Millennium Gym, so we're like the top athletes trained for Olympic sports and stuff like that as well. We were doing classes on like what your career could be outside of rugby, your nutritional advice, all these sort of things. They were really trying to immerse you in that.
Yeah. So even what you were eating, you were watching what you were eating and how you were living.
So our diets were super important. We were getting trained by professional strength and conditioning coaches. So we were learning a lot. And all of us were like 18, 19 years old. So we were all pretty fresh. And so I did that for a year. We were training with our club as well as with our academy. So it was just full on. And then after that first season that I had, the funding fell through for the academy. So so that next season there was no more academy, and the funding had gone. So I was like, what am I going to do next? Because that was sort of my pathway that was going on to the next stage. So the club that I was at the time, they had a contact that had reached out from overseas in the US, and they said, we were looking for a player in my position. Do you know anyone that you think from the union that could suit that? They gave them my details, and we ended up. I remember Skyping with a few of the management and the coaches over there, and we were just talking about the opportunities that could arise if I was to go over there. They obviously had seen a lot of my footage and stuff like that, and they said, we'd love to have you come over here and play with us, because they had aspirations of trying to win a national championship. And it was in New York City, so I was like, wow, this is crazy, Like, I'd never been out of the country before, and I was 21 years old, and I was like, this is going to be crazy opportunity. Like, I got to take it. It was all paid for flights, accommodation was paid for, and we'd be getting money as well to play while we were over there. So I was like, yeah, I felt like I really cracking it now, and I was super excited to go over. So yeah, we went over there. The rugby was a lot different to it was here. The level was a lot lower than what I was used to playing. So I found it quite easy when I was over there, and our team ended up having an undefeated season. And then going into the next spring, we were going to be going to the national championship. So I ended up coming back here, and then they flew me back again for that national championship season. And we made it to the top 4 out of the whole country. So we were playing at quite a high level at the end there, and we were playing in Denver, and then we ended up losing our semi-final. But from that point, I ended up getting an agent. So someone approached me and like, we think you've got some great skill. We'd love to represent you, and think that we could try and find some opportunities in other places for you to be able to get paid and to play. And I was thinking, oh, this is great. This is what I really wanted to be doing. And even in those times, like I mentioned before, I would think, because there's things that you were told as a kid that I remembered, especially growing up as an Adventist. And I used to think, oh, God's really blessing me here. He's like, maybe he wants me to be a professional rugby player. And you felt like he was taking you along that journey.
Yes.
Even though looking back on it now, it's probably pretty crazy thought from where I am now, from where I used to be. Yeah. Then I ended up getting an opportunity to go play over in France. That's where I guess I started to have more of an experience with God when I went over there. So I had gone there by myself, and it was tough because I couldn't speak French. I probably should have learned a little bit before I went over, but I didn't really know anything at all. So I went to a place that was on the border of Switzerland, and no one really spoke English too much. And a lot of people say, oh, French people, they don't really speak English with you, even if they can. So I felt quite homesick when I was over there because I couldn't speak. And there was only one person in our team who could translate for me. Yeah. So it was pretty tough, and I was getting pretty homesick. So I was doing pre-season over there, started getting into the start of the season. And then things that were in the contract started to fall through. So they weren't holding up their end of the bargain of what they were meant to be doing in terms of money and stuff like that. So my agent was like, we're going to try and negotiate this. Otherwise, I think it's probably better that we, get out of here. And I remember why that was going on. They told me, it's best we probably stay away from training and stay away from the team at that time. So I was pretty much alone. Yeah, and it was tough. So I remember one day I was thinking, what is this? What was the whole point of me coming over here? I thought this was my opportunity, to really crack into it. And I remember going for a run one day, and I'd run out into like a bit of a rural area. And then I remember coming along, and there was an old church that was there on the corner of one of the streets. And I was like, just inquisitive, walking around. There was no one around, so I went into the church, and it was empty, but it was open. And I remember on the walls it had like beautiful stained glass windows of Jesus, and stuff. And I was thinking, I thought to myself, what am I doing? What's my purpose? I remember praying to God at that time. What am I meant to do? Like, I need some help. Yeah, so things ended up falling through, and my agent was like, it's probably better that we get you out of here at this time. Like, it's they've lied about a few things, so it's probably not going to be best for you to stay here because things could change at any time again. So they're like, we'll get you back home, and then we'll explore some more options from there. So I remember as I was leaving, they had brought my plane tickets, and I had to take a couple buses and a couple trains to get to the airport. And they sort of just dropped me off and said, just follow this and you'll get back. But I couldn't speak French still at the time very well, so I was like, oh, this is going to be tough to try and maneuver my way through getting back to the airport. Yeah, I remember the first bus I got on, they got me to the right bus, and then the next stop I had to try find where the next platform was to get on my next train. And I was trying to explain to the cashier, like, oh, do you know how do I get to here? And they just couldn't understand what I was saying. So I remember there was a guy behind me, and he's like, oh, I speak English. Like, I can help you and show you where you need to go. He was this older gentleman. So I was like, oh, thank you. I've tried to speak to so many people, but no one can help me. So he ended up showing me where to get on the train, and we ended up just talking for, quite a few hours. It was like a 6-hour trip to get to the airport where I was going. So it was quite far.
Yeah.
And as we were talking, I was like, all right, well, I've got to get off now and get on to my next stop. And he's like, you can't speak French, how about I just take you the whole way? And I'll go with you the whole way.
Yeah. Amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy. And I was like, thank you, because if it hadn't been for him, like, I probably wouldn't have been able to get to where I was going. So he actually went with me on every train, every bus. He took me out for lunch as well. I remember we had a break in between. He's like, let's go grab some lunch. I'll pay for you. We'll have some food.
Great friend.
Yeah, I was like, this is crazy. And then he went all the way to the airport with me. And he went all the way to my gate. I turned around and he just left.
I wonder if it was an angel.
I thought the same thing. It's crazy.
How many people do that?
Yeah, so I ended up coming home. Brother had started going back to church, trying to find, he felt like he was missing something in his life as well. So he ended up going back to Brentwood, and he invited me and my mother along again, just after I'd come back from overseas. And I thought, oh yeah, I'll give this a go. I'll go along with him, because I had these sort of experiences, obviously overseas, and I called out to God, and I was hoping for, some sort of sign or to show me what my next move was in life. So I thought, oh, I'll go along and just see what this is about. So I started going there towards the end of the year. And the next year rolled around, and I was like, oh, I'm going to go back and play rugby again, because it's still really what I wanted to do. Yeah. So I started playing just in Auckland here, and I remember I used to go to church in the morning, and then we'd be like, oh, I've got to shoot off now because I'm going to play rugby. So we'd go for the morning service, and then when it was time for lunch, I'd quickly shoot off and go and play my game in the afternoon. So I started doing that for a bit, and then but the more I was coming back to church, the more I started to, hear different messages, and I started to read the Bible, and I was getting convicted about different things, and especially the Sabbath was something, that was really convicting me, because, I was playing rugby on the Sabbath, and I was thinking, does God really want me to be doing this? But, I was chasing after, your own dreams of, wanting to be a professional, wanting to be an All Black, stuff like that. So I was like, I'll go to church in the morning, but I think it'll be right if I go play in the afternoon. I was sort of justifying it that way to myself. So yeah, I was doing that for a bit, and then the next season I was like, I think I want to give rugby a break. I was like, I was getting more convicted, and I was thinking, I really think I want to, give my life to God and keep the Sabbath and do the things that, he's asking, and the things that he, wants me to be doing in my life. So I was like, I'm going to do it this year. And then as we were coming into that year, I remember I got a call from a coach, which was down in the Thames Valley, which was pretty random spot to get a call. And, he had been in touch with my agent and stuff, because they were still trying to get me a deal overseas, going over to the UK, but I wasn't really interested in going back at the time, especially after the last experience that I'd had. Yeah. So I just wanted to stay back home for a bit. And then they said, yeah, we've got this opportunity if you want to come play down for our club in the Thames Valley. We'll give you a car and fuel, and we'll pay you some money to play as well. So I was like, oh, maybe God still wants me to play. You know, I was thinking maybe He's giving me this opportunity to play, and I was like, yeah, I'll be keen. I'm really keen to go give it a crack, because they're like, you could play provincial rugby down here. There'd be a good opportunity for you to make the top side as well. So yeah, I was still doing the same thing. I was going to church in the mornings and then going playing rugby in the afternoons, and I ended up making the provincial team down there for the preseason. So we were training and we were playing a few games there, and then I remember, just out of nowhere, I sort of just fell out of the rotation. I thought I was playing some of the best rugby that I had in my life, and I was doing really well, and I sort of just fell out of rotation, and there was no real reason why that happened. And I was thinking, like, if I sort of look back on my whole journey throughout my rugby career at the time, and things had always sort of fallen through when I felt like I was at my peak, or I was almost at the door of where I could be, or where I wanted to be.
Yeah.
And I just felt like that was God.
Interesting.
Not that God, we still had free choice, obviously, to do things, but I think that God was trying to tell me that, I've got another plan for your life.
Yeah. And what about you, Morgan? You mentioned, you had a prayer with your mum. Look, Mum, I'm different. Just expand on that a little bit. Why did you see yourself as different to other girls and other teenagers?
I think because I wanted a reprieve from those feelings, and I wanted something to fix that. And I guess by the time I hit high school, you could go and see the guidance counsellor. And I actually remember going to the guidance counsellor one day to help deal with my issues. And she gave me crayons to draw a picture to express my feelings. And I remember just feeling or thinking that was ludicrous. There needed to be another way to be able to deal with what I was going on with, but I just didn't know how. And at the time I was actually attending a semi-private Catholic girls' school. And so they had religious programs that were just naturally run. And I had begun reading the Bible, but had no real guidance. And so I knew, or had come to the realization, that I had to be baptized, that was an important step. And I remember going through the process to be able to do that. But it felt really segmented, it felt really formal, and I wasn't having the experience that I thought I would. And I had a lot of questions. And I remember being 7 days away from being baptized. And
how old were you at this point?
So I would have been probably about 15 or 16 in high school, and had realised that, baptism was what I needed to do, and that was the next step in my journey. And very academic in my mind, so I need to have proof in order to believe what it is that someone's telling me. And so I knew that I needed to be baptised. I knew that it needed to be full body submersion. And when it got to the 7 days out, I remember going to the priest at the time, and I had questions around, if my family wasn't baptised, were we all going to the same place? That was a question that I had. And I also felt really strange about the fact that it wasn't going to be a full body submersion, and so I just knew that it wasn't quite right. And so I prayed to God, because when I'd gone to him and said, will we all go to the same place, he said, I don't have an answer for you. That was that, and I felt really unsettled by that.
Yes. Yeah.
So I remember praying to God around, Lord, show me what's the right way. There's all these churches that I'm reading about. There's these churches that I'm involved with, but I don't know which one's the right one. And I was doing a lot of running at the time. And so the week before I was due to be baptised, I was out running, and I was running on the road, and I saw some Mormons walking. And I thought, I've got to cross the road and get away from these guys, because I know who they are and I know what they're going to try and stop me to do. And a big surge of traffic came past. I couldn't get across the road, and I ended up getting into a conversation with them, and I asked my question around, are we all going to the same place? And they said to me, we have the answer. Families are together forever. And so that kind of began my journey in terms of, I had really intensive Bible studies, but it happened very fast. So I was one of the fastest converts, 26 days. But I got my full body submersion.
Right. Yes.
However, very quickly, I had an experience where I realised that things just didn't quite feel right.
Yeah.
And I remember that a big part of it was confession, and before you undertake works in the temple, you have to go in and confess to the bishop anything that you might be holding. And I remember being in the room with this man, and I was disclosing my deepest, darkest, things I'd never breathed into words, and he was writing it on a piece of paper. And I remember thinking, what's going to happen to that piece of paper?
Wow. Yeah.
And I got up and I left, and I thought, this isn't the way to do it. Like, God tells us that we can come to him, and he's the only one that we should have to disclose these things to.
Yes.
And I fell away. I had become interested in someone in the church, and he actually had a heart issue, and he went in for open heart surgery, and he never came out. And I guess when he died, it really shook me, because I'd come close to someone who was in part guiding me, and he was just a lovely person, and then suddenly he was gone.
Similar age or someone much older?
He was a little bit older, and so I fell away, and it really shook me, and I had lots of other stuff going on in my life. I was still dealing with feeling different, feeling like I hadn't found the truth, and I fell into drug addiction. I'd been someone growing up that was, I guess, quite adventurous. I never used drugs because I had, trauma or issues. For me, it kind of started as recreational fun. I could be someone different. I could feel comfortable. I could be whoever I wanted to be. Yeah. And I fit in.
Are we just talking marijuana, or are we talking...
In school, it started with just the cigarettes and the weed. And then I remember one night kind of getting into a group of... with a group of friends. We'd been just smoking pot, and I'd met a couple of new people. They were older guys that were obviously involved in some deeper stuff. And I remember being out with my best friend that night, and we couldn't get any weed. And someone said to me, "We've got some crack, do you want to smoke that?" And Morgan thought, yes, we'll give it a go. And I was really quite naive. I had no idea what I was doing, really. And I remember my best friend saying to me, "I'm going to go home." I didn't see her for 3 years after that, because I went down the rabbit hole. Yeah. And what started as fun turned into fun with problems. And then it was just problems. And for 3 years, I was caught up in that world. We were lying, stealing, burgling houses, all sorts of stuff I never thought that I would ever do. Yeah. And I remember it getting so bad to the point where my car was in the impound, because he'd taken it for a joyride and had been stopped. So I lost my car. I was living in this dirty, dingy flat with him, and I remember being stuck in there one day because he'd taken my car. I didn't have a car. I'd sold my phone because we had to pay rent that week, and it was the last item I had that was worth money. I couldn't call out. I couldn't go anywhere. I'd sold my clothes, my shoes. I had nothing. Yeah. And I remember him going out, and I'd been locked in the house, and I couldn't get out. And he'd been gone for several days. I had no food. And I remember being desperate on the ground, praying to God, saying, "This isn't my life. You need to help me, because I don't know what to do." And he came home, and it was the day before I knew that everything was going to fall apart, because I didn't have an option. Once I gave that money over that I had with the phone, that was it. And he came home, and he said, "Where's the money?" And I said, "I can't give it to you because we have to pay rent in the morning." And he says, "You either give it to me now or I'm going to beat it out of you." And so I gave it to him. And he left. And I remember sitting there, and I just thought, I've got no other choice. I've got to go home. I'm going to have to ring my parents and say that this is how bad it's got. So I managed to get a phone, and I called my dad, and I said, "Dad, I'm ready to come home." And he said, "It's really great to hear from you, Morg. You need to call your mum." So I called my mum, And she said, you need to come home and we will sit down and we'll talk about what the options are. They knew at this point that I was using, but I had chosen to leave. And I remember I walked home. I had no other option.
Long walk.
It wasn't that far, but it was long enough. I walked home and my mum sat me down at the kitchen table and she had an A4 white piece of paper and a pen. She said, write down how bad it is. I wrote down everything. At that point, I'd lost my job. I'd lost my car. I didn't have any money. I was in severe debt. And she looked at the piece of paper and she looked at me and she said, oh my goodness, this is bad. I don't know if we can fix this. She said, you need to leave. Give me some time and I will come back to you around whether I'm ready to take this on. And at this point, I'd really caused some friction in my family.
Right, yes. Over that 3-year period.
Huge
yes.
amount.
Yeah.
It had almost ruined my parents' marriage, which I had not been privy to or had not seen. My brother and my sister had suffered because the focus was on me. Yeah. My mum had become really ill and had been hospitalised because she couldn't handle the stress. Wow. And so in accepting me back home, they obviously had to think about the wider implications for my family. And I remember her calling me not long after, and she said, I will have you in my house, but these are the rules. And it was that I had to go to full residential rehab. I had to get clean. There was to be no drugs in the house, and I had to cut all contact with any of the old people that I knew. And so I was still in my drug phase. I kind of felt like out of desperation I had to make these changes, even though I knew that I also wanted to. Yeah. But I was still very caught up in loving this person and thinking that, we could get clean together or, we could fix this.
Yes, yeah.
So I went to rehab with the intention of I'll just get through this and then I can go back to doing what I was doing, but I'll be a bit better off. But when I was in there, I had my experience with God, truly. And I remember going into rehab that first night and the door closing behind me, and I just lay on my bed and I sobbed and I said, Lord, why am I here? This is not me. And I was just so ashamed that I got myself into that situation. And I went through the motions, I went through rehab, I got clean.
It's over a month, is it? Or
It was 3-month period of full residential rehab. I got clean. I got out of there. I haven't been perfect, but that kind of really, for me, was the starting point for the rest of my life. Yeah. I got clean. I got out of rehab. I continued to not associate with those people anymore. And I got back into work. I worked and got myself my first car again. Wow. And I literally had to rebuild my life from scratch.
Your mother must have been quietly rejoicing.
Well, I'll tell you, 2 years after all of that, I grappled my way back. I paid all my debt off. I got myself a car. It wasn't the flashiest, but it was what my mum said I could have. And one day out of the blue, she pulled out that A4 piece of paper and she'd been crossing off the things that we had sorted. Paid off this debt. Wow. Got a car. And I remember her saying to me, I'm so proud of you. Look how far you've come.
And this is all before you met each other on Tinder, right?
Yeah.
So you'd both been taken to just deep, deep lows. What's my life all about? Huge disappointment. You were discovering, that he was a Seventh-day Adventist. He was a Sabbath keeper. So tell us a little bit more about how you started actually dating. How did that come about? Mm.
How did it come about? It started with church. So I just started tentatively kind of going along and showing up. And then I realised that I needed to separate my relationship with Trent and my relationship with God. So I undertook the studies and I made sure that I did those alone so that he wasn't there to influence me and how I felt about what I was receiving. And our friendship really just kind of blossomed and developed. And I don't know at what point it kind of changed for you.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, like I actually wasn't sure that, this was the right girl for me at the time. Like when God puts something right in front of you, sometimes you don't realize it. Yeah. So I think just the more that our friendship grew, and the more yeah, we were sharing our experiences that we were having on our journeys with Christ separately, and then we were having these experiences together, where we started reading the Bible and reading, Ellen White and different things like this, and we were sort of going along that journey together, I think, even though...
We did Bible studies. I remember...
Yeah.
I was doing the 24 studies, but I would then go and revisit them with him, and he would explain more in full or give me a deeper understanding. And I think what really attracted me to him was actually that spiritual side and the softness and the kindness and just the way that I saw how much Trent loved God. It was so evident, and I was literally watching someone transform before my eyes. And we started having those conversations around, what does a relationship look like? And I actually at the time was working as a counsellor. I was a drug and alcohol counsellor after I'd gone through my own experience. And I remember still dealing with him and the relationship side of things. And I was petitioning God around, why does this guy not understand that we're meant to be together? And I remember praying about it, and I thought, maybe I'm just trying to push this, Lord, and it's actually not what's meant to be. And I'd gone to work that day and really couldn't concentrate, and I had to pray because I had to deal with these clients and actually be present for them. And it was actually for the Salvation Army, and I remember praying about it, saying, Lord, if this is the relationship that I need to pursue, because he kept kind of pushing me off, let me know, or if I need to cut ties, do that, because this is really causing a lot of anxiety for me to the point where I can't function, and I don't understand why. And I remember going out of my counselling room after doing the prayer to collect my client, and on the counter was a calendar, a Christian calendar, and it said on there, it was the unequally yoked scripture, and it said, if you're not yoked, it won't be right, and God can't... I can't remember what the line was exactly, but underneath that scripture, there was a line that said, if it's meant to be, the Lord will make it be. And I just took such great comfort in that. And at that point, I let go. And I just thought, okay, Lord, I'm going to focus on you. And if that relationship is what you want, it's going to happen. And quite quickly after that, that's when there was a huge shift. And we became much more involved in the church together. We started doing bits of ministry and serving. And I think... Trent, for me, and maybe vice versa, was a real strength. He was always uplifting and encouraging me, and also is very strong in his beliefs and convictions, and so really helped support me on that journey in terms of, especially around the Sabbath, the things that we have to give up or the things that we have to do differently, and just having kind of that helpmate so early on in my Christian journey was amazing. And I think in terms of our courtship, we then very early on realised that actually we wanted to do things differently, but there had to be a discussion because we'd both come from really normal relationship.
So you obviously had those honest discussions?
We did.
It wasn't easy though.
There was a lot of frustration, and it was probably from my point of view because Trent had already made that decision and I felt like it was being imposed upon me.
And what decision was that exactly?
I guess we just wanted to... do our relationship the right way, right? We, we decided, we didn't want to live together until we got married. We weren't doing anything sexual throughout the time. And we still aren't because we're still not married. So, and it's been 5 years, and you tell people that, and they think you're crazy
or lying.
I think you're lying or you're crazy. There's something going on, and it's like, no, we just wanted to do it the right way because then we felt like God could really bless, our courtship, our relationship.
Yes.
Because, I've seen other experiences where people, have done it the other way, I guess the opposite way to the way that God wants us to do it. And you see how that can cause problems and the relationship isn't that strong and things can go south. So we just wanted to do it. We want to try to do it God's way. Because we felt like, God would bless us if we were to, follow the steps that he's given for us. So,
I feel like we both have experienced God's love. And if God's the true definition of love, if we put him at the center of both our lives, then the love that we experience together, threefold cord is not easily broken. And so I really didn't understand until quite recently what it means to love God more than anybody else. And I can honestly say that I know that Trent loves God more than he loves me, and I love God more than I love Trent. But that's so important in order for us to really love one another. And so what we're experiencing in terms of what I guess would call true love is different to anything I've ever experienced before. And I almost feel like there's this protection on our relationship. It doesn't mean it's not perfect and that we don't experience problems. But I truly feel that when we are married, that nothing can break that. And God tells us in his word that there's no reason that a marriage should be broken except for some very clear guidelines. So it gives me that encouragement that we can literally work through anything. And we can do that with God's help. And I think we've done that to date in terms of, we're human and there's very normal human tendencies. But relying on God to work through that and also being really open and honest with one another has been helpful. Trent's probably a bit more conservative in terms of having those conversations. I'm a lot more loud. And I've been very honest with him in terms of this is what I'm struggling with, or, the lack of physical intimacy brings worry to me. Is our relationship lacking? And I remember a really distinct car conversation with him where I was so frustrated and I just thought, and I said to him, it was kind of an argument. I said, you've imposed this on me and this was your decision, not mine.
I said, it's an us thing, not a me thing.
I said, it's not an us thing. It's a you thing that you've made an us thing. But just having those really kind of honest conversations. And I said to him, does the lack of physical intimacy not bug you? And he turned around and said, honestly, Morgan, I don't feel like our relationship is lacking anything. And that really would just be the icing on the cake. Wow. And for me, it was so reaffirming, and God spoke to me through Trent in that moment, and I realised that I had to put aside my own selfish carnal needs and actually realised that here was someone that genuinely was showing up for me and wanted to be with me and love me, and it didn't have to involve that. And so at that point it became an us decision.
Now we can say it's an us thing.
Now
it's not just a me thing.
Yes. Have you set a date for marriage?
We have.
You have?
November the 23rd.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing, Trent and Morgan. Your testimony is just amazing, but just how God is working in your life now through your relationship. And he's just been showing. The world teaches us now that, as soon as you like someone, you go into the physical side. And it feels like it's got to be that way now, but you are a testimony that that is not the case. And where God says, seek first his kingdom and his righteousness, and all these things will be added unto you. You are a living, happy, joyful testimony that it's true and that it can work. And so if it can work for you, viewers, I just hope that you've been blessed by what you've heard today, and that for all of us, we can learn to live a pure life. May Jesus bless you in your life. Thank you both. Amen.
Thank you.
Mm.